If you listen just before the first light touches the world, you may catch the breath of a garden that has not quite left its dreams. The morning does not arrive with a trumpet or fanfare. It enters slowly, tenderly, with the softest light drifting across a sky not yet blue, not yet awake. The stars withdraw without sound, and the breeze stirs only the most delicate of leaves. The garden holds still. It remembers night, but the day is arriving, and you are here to walk quietly into it, not to chase it, not to greet it with movement. Their blossoms are heavy with dew, and as you move beneath them, a droplet lands gently on your shoulder. You do not brush it away. The scent of the flowers is faint, like memory. You wonder how many mornings it has seen. How many birds have landed on its head? How many petals have fallen at its feet? It does not answer. The garden holds its secrets quietly, like pages in a closed book. Light now floods the space between the olive trees, and the air carries a subtle warmth. You look back for a moment, but the villa is hidden by trees. All around you, the garden glows. There is no sound but the rustle of leaves and the hush of your own breath. You are not here to remember or to forget. You are not here to find or to lose. You are simply a guest in this hour of stillness. And as the light thickens and the garden continues to open, you remain, carried gently by morning. You pause and let the moment settle. There is no noise beyond the wind and the small movements of leaf and insect. The world does not ask anything of you here. You are not expected to answer or speak or move. You are simply present. The garden continues to breathe, and so do you. You walk forward slowly, each step light and sure. There is nowhere you must be except here. You do not need to open them. It is enough to sit, to breathe, and to feel the slow movement of morning pass like a quiet current beneath your skin. The ground is uneven with moss, and your footsteps grow slower still. The sun has now climbed above the tallest wall, casting long threads of gold across the garden. Shadows stretch like silk across stone and soil. A robin watches from a low branch, blinking once, then disappearing into green. You pass by thyme bushes, blooming in small purple clusters. Their scent is soft and earthy. A single butterfly drifts past, its wings barely stirring the air. All around you, the day unfolds as if remembering a story it once told. You notice a fern beginning to unfurl beside a low stone wall. Its delicate spiral faces the new light, not in praise, but simply in response. Everything here seems to open in quiet agreement with the day, but simply to be in its company, as one might sit beside a friend who has just begun to stir. You lower yourself onto it, hands resting loosely in your lap. The world around you continues in soft rhythms. A breeze moves gently through the olive trees. Leaves shift and whisper against one another. Somewhere nearby, a bee begins its slow circle from blossom to blossom, not buzzing but humming low. The air tastes faintly of sage and morning. You breathe deeply and feel your own breath settle into the same rhythm. In this place, nothing pulls. You are allowed to be still. The old villa behind you rests without urgency. Its shutters remain closed, its walls worn smooth by time and weather. Ivy crawls across the edges of its tiled roof. Vines spill over stone planters, and the stairs that lead down to the garden are softened with moss. The stone is cool beneath your feet, made slick by dew. Water, left from the night's quiet rain, fills it just to the brim. A single white petal floats across its surface, turning slowly in circles. The reflection of the branches above wavers, a quiet mirror of the waking sky. You pause beside it, still, and listen. Somewhere nearby, water drips slow, deliberate, soft. You hear the rustle of a bird, hopping through ivy, then silence again. Nothing rushes. Time thickens like honey in morning warmth. You do not hurry it. You let it surround you. You breathe in slowly. The air carries a mixture of scents: wet soil, early blossom, and something older, like wood warmed by sun long ago. The stillness around you is not empty. It is full of waiting, as if the earth itself is holding its breath for a few moments longer before waking fully. You begin walking, not toward anything in particular, but simply to move within the hush. The path curves gently beneath a line of laurel trees, their branches meeting overhead in a green archway. The stones beneath you are cracked and uneven, their surfaces worn smooth by footsteps long past. A few petals have fallen in the night and now rest lightly along the path, undisturbed by even the lightest breeze. As you walk, your body begins to remember slowness. There is no destination, only presence. The garden does not lead you forward. It walks beside you. Near the path's edge, a basin of old marble rests beneath a fig tree. The path draws you onward, and you pass beneath an arch of clematis and rose. There is a bench ahead, carved from stone and worn smooth at the edges. A statue stands nearby, its features faded by time and wind. It watches without watching, its eyes soft, its stone shoulders draped in ivy. As you rise and continue, the path widens slightly, and the trees part to reveal more sky. At the far edge of the garden, the path becomes straighter. The hedge is thin. And now, in the clearest patch of light, you pause again. The sun rests fully on your shoulders. The path begins with a gentle curve, laid with small stones that glistened faintly in the morning light. Each pebble seems to have found its place over time, settled by countless footsteps and quiet years. Moss grows between them in thin green veins, softening their edges. As you walk, your feet meet the surface with a soft crunch that barely disturbs the stillness. The coolness of the stones lingers through the soles, grounding you in this place. Their trunks twist gracefully, roots exposed like slow rivers of wood. The pebbled path loops around its edge, where a stone bench waits beneath a pomegranate tree. Its leaves shimmer in the morning light, and a few tiny fruits have begun to form. You rest here briefly, your hands resting on the smooth edge of the bench. Beyond it, the pebbles thin, and soft soil takes their place. A tree leans gently overhead, its shadow cool upon your shoulders. The stones beneath your feet hold the last warmth of the sun. You have walked far. It never rushed. Each step carried you deeper into the quiet. The path will remain, winding patiently through garden and memory. The pebbles will stay, cool and silent beneath another morning. You breathe once more, deeply, slowly, and the garden exhales with you. You look back once more. The path behind you curves out of sight. There is no need to remember each detail. What matters is how you have moved through it, without urgency, with soft steps, as if walking inside a story made of morning and stone. The breeze rises slightly, and a few petals fall. You turn forward again, into the next quiet place, wherever the garden chooses to lead. The sun filters through the branches, creating patterns on the ground that shift with every movement of the leaves. Everything feels settled, untroubled. You are no longer walking for distance. You are walking to remain within this calm. Tiny white blossoms cling to the lower branches, and the air is thick with their sweet perfume. Pebbles crunch softly beneath your steps, mixing with the sound of bees murmuring above. A small marble column, broken and leaning, stands in a bed of wild marjoram. Its purpose forgotten, it now serves as a perch for lichen and moss. You run your fingers along its surface and feel the warmth left by the sun. The garden continues, unchanged in its gentleness. A bird flutters through a nearby fig tree, and a petal tumbles to the ground. There is no sound that asks attention, just the quiet rhythm of your steps upon the stones. Larger stones mark its edges, and the pebbles have a faint reddish hue, warmed by years of sun. To your left, a wall of ivy rises high, and to your right, a narrow stream runs beside the path, its flow too gentle to speak aloud. A few golden leaves float upon it, slowly circling toward a drain hidden in the stone. The path feels older here, as though few come this far. Ferns lean in from the edges, and the air is cooler, carrying the scent of water and shadow. You walk without thought, without effort. The pathway winds between rows of bay laurels, their dark leaves rustling with the breeze that drifts in from the hills beyond the villa. Their features are softened by time, their forms dressed now in moss and ivy. You pass between them with care, as if entering a room whose walls are made of leaves and sky. The pebbles underfoot shift slightly, and you adjust your steps. You are not tired, only slowed. Here, even stillness has texture. You listen again. The sound of the world has grown quieter, or perhaps your attention has grown finer. Either way, there is peace in each breath, in each pause. They stand like watchful sentinels, tall and evenly spaced, casting shifting shadows that play upon the ground. Small puddles remain where rain settled during the night, reflecting bits of sky and branches above. Their neatness contrasts softly with the more natural vines that spill over the walls nearby. Here, the pebbles are finer, almost sand-like in places, blending into the soil at the edges. A squirrel darts through the underbrush, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. You pause beside a sun-warmed stone and listen. A breeze stirs the hedges gently. Leaves whisper. Insects drone faintly. The entire space hums with calm. You press forward, not out of need, but simply to see what lies beyond. A single leaf floats in one of them, drifting lazily from one edge to another. The curve of the path reveals more garden beyond, not in sudden discovery, but in slow unfolding. A stone stairway appears, low and wide, its steps descending gently toward a lower terrace. The edges are softened with creeping time, its fragrance rising with each footstep. You pause, place your hand on the stone rail, and descend at the pace of the morning. Some of the stones here are cracked, others sunken slightly, but none feel out of place. Each imperfection tells of time spent undisturbed. At your side, a cluster of violets peeks through the moss, blooming shyly. The air smells faintly of lemon balm and earth warmed by sun. You continue walking slowly, letting the path draw you deeper without question. Further ahead, the stones grow more warm, smoothed by age and moisture. At the base of the stairs, the path splits around a cluster of boxwood hedges trimmed low into rounded shapes. The path narrows again, curving behind a cluster of citrus trees. Around another bend, you come upon a low wall of stacked stones, weathered and mossy, enclosing a circular courtyard. You rise and move once more, the path now wider and more structured. The path then leads between two statues, one of a woman holding a sheaf of wheat, the other of a man with a scroll. Eventually, the path turns one final time, leading you through a narrow gate of wrought iron, rusted gently and ajar. And now you stop, not because the path ends, but because stillness asks you to. At a gentle bend in the path, the trees begin to shift. The tidy rows of boxwood and citrus give way to a quiet clearing, embraced on all sides by ancient laurel trees. Their branches curve low and wide, sweeping outward in arcs. They form a natural canopy above. The air grows denser here, as if hushed by the foliage itself. Dappled light falls through the layered leaves, painting the earth with soft shapes. Everything within this circle seems to move slower. The longer you remain, the more the world outside this canopy seems to dissolve. In its place is only light and leaf, and the slow beat of a place untouched by urgency. A breeze drifts through, bringing with it the scent of crushed bay and something faintly sweet, like the skin of green fruit. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to listen better. The sounds are soft, layered, and rhythmic. Your steps are slow, and the path feels soft beneath your feet. As you walk back through the circle of trees, the light grows warmer once again. The edges of the clearing blur behind you, as if the laurel branches are folding closed, You do not look back. The stillness you found remains with you, tucked inside like a pressed leaf between the pages of a book. The path curves gently again, leading onward. But part of you stays beneath the tree, seated in endless calm. Wind through branches, a leaf brushing stone, insects humming without any haste, the sound of laurel leaves shifting, the cool stone against your skin, the scent of old wood and bay drifting through green light. The world moves gently around you. The garden continues, patient and slow. You walk without effort, as if wrapped in something tender and light. The day does not press forward. It unfolds. And within it, you remain a quiet figure passing through green spaces, gathering calm one step at a time. There is a kind of silence here that has weight, not from stillness alone, but from the countless moments it has held before you arrived. The deep olive of the laurel leaves above, the dusty sage of nearby shrubs, the mossy velvet climbing the stones. Even the light seems green. It filters through the canopy and lands on your skin like memory, warm and ancient. You feel not like a visitor, but like something the garden has always expected. The bench beneath you has held many before. The tree has watched them all. Its trunk leans slightly, not from weakness, but from having seen enough to know that no moment needs to be rushed. The largest laurel stands slightly off-center, its thick trunk twisted with age and covered in bark that peels in long, thin strips. On it lies a single bowl carved from wood, stained dark with time and rain. It is empty now, save for a few dried petals that have fallen in. You do not touch it. Its presence adds to the quiet weight of the place, like a forgotten offering. You imagine others who may have sat here long ago, hands folded, eyes closed, breathing in the same air. The garden holds their stillness as it holds yours now. There is no separation between past and present, only a long stretch of peace laid out like a blanket beneath the trees. Moss grows up its sides, and a web stretches between two low-hanging branches, glistening where the sunlight touches it. Shadows grow longer, and the breeze grows cooler. The leaves continue their soft music. One by one they fall, drifting down in slow spirals. You remain on the bench, unmoving. There is no place beyond this that you must be. The moment has gathered you into it completely. Even your thoughts have slowed to match the garden's breath. You are not trying to remember or forget. You are only resting suspended gently in the green hush beneath the laurel's shade. You are simply seated in the present, where nothing asks of you. The rustle of wind through the branches is slow and steady, like breathing. A single feather floats down from above and lands at your feet. You watch it without reaching for it. The garden has drawn you into this quiet center, and in return you offer stillness. Even the air seems slower here. It tastes of leaf and shadow, of mornings that never hurried and afternoons that never worried where they would end. Beneath this tree sits a stone bench, half circled around the roots, as if it too has grown from the earth. You lower yourself slowly, letting your hands rest on your knees. The stone is cool and smooth beneath you. You do not speak. You only sit. The tree above sways slightly, its leaves whispering like pages being turned. Here beneath the laurel, time unravels. You are not thinking about the hours that have passed, nor the ones to come. The light shifts gently across the bench, moving in long slants through the trees. A few leaves drift down from above, not because it is autumn, but because the tree has lived long enough to let go with ease. The ground is soft here, a bed of fallen leaves and damp soil. Tiny mushrooms have gathered in the shaded corners, pale and round, like thumbprints of the forest. Somewhere behind you, a bird lands with a faint flutter and begins to preen in silence. Its presence is brief but full. You sense it rather than watch it. Life here does not announce itself. It simply continues. Your body begins to settle, bones growing heavier, breath slower. There is no pressure to rise or move. You open your eyes again and notice how many layers of green exist here. In one corner of the clearing, a small stone table leans against a cluster of roots. The light begins to fade just slightly, not from time passing quickly, but from the quiet movement of clouds above. Eventually, you rise not because you must, but because the garden seems to nod in encouragement. And now, as you continue along the garden path, you carry with you the softness of that place. In the heart of the garden, nestled within a gentle circle of stone, stands an old fountain carved from pale marble. Time has softened its edges, but the figure at its center remains clear. Stone benches surround it, placed at even distances, their surfaces worn by years of quiet visitors. You approach one slowly and take your seat, feeling the coolness of the stone seep through your clothing. The water continues to fall in its unhurried rhythm. A droplet lands on a lily pad, and the ripple it creates expands outward until it fades into the stillness. It sips once, pauses, then sips again. You watch it without moving. Its presence adds no noise, only more softness to the moment. His gaze looks down toward the water, as though listening to his own melody echo back. Ivy climbs along his legs, wrapping around his marble flute, becoming part his shape. You study the folds of stone, the curves worn by rain and time. Each drop lands with a soft plink, like the ticking of a forgotten clock. The fountain remains behind you, continuing its endless lullaby. The water still falls, the petals still drift, and the statue still listens. You step away, not leaving the piece behind, but carrying it with you like the echo of a soft song. Your footsteps are light. The garden stretches ahead. The paths are waiting, but they do not call loudly. They only open, one turn at a time, into more stillness. The fountain fades behind you, its voice growing fainter with each step, but its rhythm stays inside you, guiding your breath, steady and calm. There is no urgency in it, only a gentle reminder that time is passing, even when it feels like it has stopped. The garden does not hold you. It does not ask you to stay. It offers only the rhythm of breath and falling water, the hush of leaves and petals, the kindness of a place that remembers how to be still. You stay a little longer, not because you must, but because the moment is full. The basin of the fountain is wide and shallow, and at its bottom, tiny pebbles glint beneath the clear surface. A few petals float there, caught in lazy spirals. The whole fountain seems to breathe, though it does not move. It stays only a few seconds, then flutters away into a nearby olive tree. The water becomes a soft thread winding through a quiet forest. You imagine sitting beneath trees, the same trees from long ago. You feel the warmth of sunlight that does not rush. You do not dream. You rest somewhere between thought and sleep. The fountain continues. The wind continues. Nothing is lost. Everything is carried forward gently. When you open your eyes, nothing has changed. That is the comfort of this place. It does not change with haste. It allows you to return to yourself without surprise. The leaves above sway and glitter, their silver undersides catching the light. Shadows dance across the surface of the water. You look down and see your own reflection, but it is softened, blurred by the ripples and light. It is not a mirror. It is a reminder that everything here moves gently. Around the edges of the basin, green moss gathers in soft patches, and a few small leaves drift lazily across the surface of the water, carried without direction. A statue of Pan, the woodland spirit, leans slightly forward, his lips pressed to a flute frozen in song. From the mouth of the flute, a steady stream of water falls, catching the light in a thin ribbon before disappearing into the shallow basin below. They form a kind of shelter, not closing you in, but holding the quiet space intact. Climbing roses wind through the leaves, and a few blossoms have opened fully, pale pink against deep green. Their petals fall one by one, each finding its place upon the path. A bee lands, pauses, then moves on. You watch its journey without needing to follow it. You remain on the bench, listening, breathing, feeling the stone beneath your palms and the warmth of morning gathering around your shoulders. Lavender stretches outward in pale gray tufts, and clusters of mint send up a cool scent when stirred by wind. You breathe deeply, letting the fragrance mix with the sound of the water. The air is warm, but not heavy. It carries the scent of things growing, things resting. You begin to notice how even your breath has slowed, matching the pace of the fountain. Each inhalation feels like drawing in the rhythm of the garden. Each exhalation, a quiet surrender to stillness. The sound it makes is not loud. It is not sharp or demanding. It is the kind of sound that wraps around the edges of thought and fills the space between moments. The fountain rests where four paths meet, each lined with hedges and quiet plants. The sound of the water becomes a kind of breath, steady and soft, neither beginning nor ending. You do not count the drops or try to follow their path. You only listen. The fountain sings to no one and everyone. Its lullaby is constant, as if it has always been playing, and you have only now tuned into its quiet song. The breeze passes gently across the space, rustling through the vines that climb the garden walls. A dragonfly hovers over the surface of the fountain before darting away, leaving only a brief shimmer of wings behind. The plants around the fountain grow low and round, softening the geometry of the stone. On the far side of the fountain, a small bird lands and pecks gently at the edge. The statue of Pan seems both playful and still, caught forever in the act of music. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds paint images behind your eyelids. Behind the fountain, a wall of tall hedges blocks out the world beyond. A few steps from the fountain, a stone basin catches the overflow, and the water drips into it at intervals too slow to measure. And now you rise again slowly, without effort. The garden softens as afternoon settles in, bringing with it a warmth that is more golden than bright. Shadows stretch gently, and the breeze moves with a slower rhythm. You follow a quiet path that curves past a low wall of rosemary and thyme. The scent rises before your steps, light and familiar, like something remembered from childhood. The sun falls in ribbons across the stone, and the air feels thick with stillness. Some lean toward the sun, others stretch out in every direction. There is no order, and yet everything feels in place. The pathways are edged with stones that have sunk slightly into the earth, their surfaces worn and warm. Tiny lizards dart across them and vanish between leaves. You walk again, not to explore, but to remain within the rhythm of the place. The herbs glow at their edges, and the shadows grow longer across the garden beds. Everything has ripened into calm. The garden does not close. It opens endlessly, petal by petal, moment by moment. The scent of lavender lingers at the edges of your awareness, and the warm stones beneath you remind you that you are here, not as a visitor, but as something woven into the rhythm of the place. You do not rise. You do not need to. You are already where you were meant to arrive. The afternoon continues, without asking for anything in return. You find yourself drawn again to the bench, and this time you lie back, eyes toward the canopy above. The fig leaves move slightly, and the world beyond them fades. All that remains is scent, warmth, and the slow passage of afternoon. The sounds around you soften the bees, the breeze, the birds. They do not vanish. They simply settle into quiet agreement with the light. Your breath slows with theirs. Each step stirs new fragrance from the ground. Each breath holds a different note, sometimes sweet, sometimes earthy. You pause beside a tall stem of flowering fennel, its yellow blossoms dancing slightly in the wind. A single petal detaches and drifts downward, landing gently beside your foot. You do not move. You only watch as it settles into the soil and becomes part of the stillness. The sound of your own breath begins to match the rhythm of the garden slow, even soft as the breeze that rustles through the sage. Somewhere ahead lies the herb garden, tucked into a sun-drenched corner of the grounds where thyme grows fragrant and low to the ground. Upon it sits a set of clay pots, some filled with drying herbs, others empty and chipped. The sound is almost too soft to notice at first, but once heard, it becomes part of everything. A few sprigs of rosemary have fallen in, floating lazily on the surface. You lean closer, watching as the ripples move outward in slow rings. The water smells faintly of metal and moss. A fly lands briefly on the rim, then lifts off again, disappearing into the rosemary bush behind you. The moment is so small that it might be forgotten, but here even small moments linger. There is no need to touch anything. Their presence is enough. They speak quietly of hands that once worked here, gathering mint in the morning, tying bundles of thyme in the shade. The air around them holds stories, though none demand to be told. You linger near them, your shadow mixing with the dappled light that falls through the fig leaves. Even the silence here has texture. As you enter the herb garden, the change is subtle but complete. Rows of lavender stretch outward, their stems heavy with small purple blossoms. Nearby, lemon balm sends up a citrusy note, lightening the air. Marjoram and oregano climb low stone dividers, and a patch of mint hides in the shade, its cool scent rising with every movement. You walk slowly, pausing often, letting the scent of each plant surround you before moving on. The heat of the afternoon deepens the aromas. They mix and overlap, wrapping around you like invisible threads. There is no rush here, only the gentle unfolding of one scent into another. Bees drift from flower to flower, not buzzing loudly, but moving in slow, hovering loops. You make your way to it, stepping carefully between stone-bordered beds. The bench is aged but sturdy, its surface warm from the sun. You sit quietly, hands resting loosely in your lap, and take in the garden from this still vantage. Bees hum low in the distance. A butterfly lands on a sprig of lavender, folding and unfolding its wings slowly. The scent of basil reaches you again, mingling now with a faint sweetness from the fig tree above. You close your eyes for a moment, simply to breathe. The ground here is dry and warm, the stones beneath your feet sun-baked and pale. You bend slightly, letting your fingers brush across a sprig of sage. Its leaves are soft, like warm velvet, and release a dusty, calming scent. You hold the fragrance on your fingertips for a moment, and let it drift away into the air. Beyond the lavender and sage, basil grows in dense clusters, its leaves dark green and slightly glossy. At the far end of the garden, a wooden bench sits in partial shade beneath a small fig tree. When you open your eyes again, the garden seems unchanged, though a few petals have fallen since you last looked. The plants grow without concern for time. You rise from the bench and move toward a low table set against a wall of ivy. Along one wall, a small copper basin collects water from a trickling spout. A slight breeze returns, carrying with it the scent of sun-warmed herbs and the dust of the path. The sun has begun its slow descent, and the light shifts to amber. And now, as you lie still in the heart of the herb garden, the air wraps around you like a shawl. At the far edge of the garden, tucked beside a low wall where the vines grow thickest, rests a sundial made of stone. It stands on a square pedestal, worn smooth in places by time and weather. Even the birds seem to keep a respectful distance. The stone beneath your feet is warm, and the scent of thyme and larkspur lingers in the air. From this distance, you can see the curve of the gnomon's shadow, stretching toward the numeral for the afternoon hour. You listen for a moment, not for any particular sound, but for the absence of hurry. It does not move. It allows light to pass across it, hour by hour, season by season, year by year. Rain has darkened its edges. A snail moves slowly across the wall, its shell glinting slightly in the sun. You watch it for a while, its pace as unhurried as the sundial's shadow. A ladybug lands nearby and crawls across your sleeve before lifting away. It does not keep you from moving forward, nor pull you back. It simply offers a place to pause, a place to notice. The warmth of stone beneath your hand, the slow creep of ivy along the wall, the sound of the world moving gently around you. All of it becomes part of the moment. The sundial does not rush. It does not mark time as something spent. It allows time to rest, to pool, to soften around you. And in that softness, you begin to rest too. Even these smallest of lives seem to move in step with the rhythm of the garden. The sundial's shadow stretches longer across the stone, reaching beyond the hour it once marked. You remain seated, watching without watching. There is no need to measure the light. There is no need to know what comes next. You are surrounded by the presence of time, but untouched by its pressure. A sundial has taught you this. That time, when left alone, does not chase. It settles. And within that stillness, so can you. You close your eyes once more, letting the light fall where it may. There is no resistance here, only the quiet flow of one moment into the next. You feel yourself breathing in rhythm with it all. The sky shifts in color, and the shadow lengthens further still. You walk away gently, not leaving time behind, but bringing with you a new way to hold it. You are not measuring moments now. You are resting within them. The sundial fades into the garden, becoming one with the stones and vines and breath of the afternoon. And in your steps, there is no urgency, only quiet, only calm. Lichen has crept up its sides, but still it stands, measuring the sunlight with quiet certainty. Yet each still holds its place. The shadow touches a mark near the center an hour long past, or perhaps newly arrived. The sundial does not declare which. You realize how often time is chased, counted, managed. But here, time simply is. It stretches and settles, thick like honey in the warm afternoon light. You close your eyes and listen again. The garden breathes with you. The air holds you steady. You imagine how many days have passed in its presence, how many mornings began with its shadow at one place, and how many evenings closed with that shadow stretched long and low. The sundial knows nothing of deadlines. It offers only the shape of sunlight at a moment in time. Somewhere, a bee moves between blossoms, and a petal falls gently from above. The shadow of the sundial shifts a fraction, too small to measure. But you know it has changed. The world turns slowly, steadily, and this quiet instrument reminds you of it without ever needing to speak. The shadow on the dial shifts once more, though you do not see it happen. You only sense the change, like the slow turn of a page. You sit again on the bench, letting your body grow heavy, grounded in this quiet corner. The sundial remains unchanged, yet it changes everything around it. Its stillness gives context to the motion of leaves, the drift of clouds, the descent of sun. You are not lost in thought. You are held in awareness, present, grounded, unmoving, and yet fully alive. In its silence, it holds an understanding of time that is not bound by urgency or need. There is no ticking, no chiming, no announcement of time's passage. Only the slow drift of light and the quiet movement of shadow on stone. You lean back, resting your hands on your lap. The sun falls across your face with a warmth that does not press. The sundial does not command attention. It invites you to notice what you normally overlook. You pause before the pedestal, resting one hand gently along its side. The surface is rough and cool where it hides in shade, and smoother where the sun has touched it for centuries. You breathe in deeply, the silence of the place wrapping around your chest like a shawl. The dial itself is round, its surface faintly carved with Roman numerals that have faded to soft shadows of their former form. At its center, a single bronze gnomon rises like a blade of light, casting its slender shadow across the stone. The sun above is steady, but the shadows move slowly, too slowly for the eye to see. Here, time is measured in stillness. You approach the sundial without urgency, letting your steps fall quietly upon the gravel path. Around it, the garden is quieter than elsewhere. A bench sits nearby beneath a fig tree, and you settle into it slowly, facing the sundial. Above, the sky holds a clear blue, and the fig leaves tremble slightly with the breeze. The longer you remain, the more you begin to feel the sundial's patience. Behind the sundial, the wall is covered with ivy, and the stone peeks through in places where the leaves have not yet reached. You rise and step closer to the sundial, letting your fingers brush gently across the carved numerals. They are shallow now, warm, nearly smooth. A breeze returns, brushing your skin and rustling the ivy nearby. In this hour, nothing needs to be done. The sundial does not demand attention. The garden is quiet now, the sun beginning its slow dip toward evening. And when you finally rise, the sundial remains behind, unchanged and unbothered. The garden continues. The breeze moves slowly across the leaves. Beyond a narrow archway framed in climbing roses lies the conservatory. Its walls shimmer faintly, made entirely of aged glass panes held together by weathered iron. As you step through, the light shifts instantly. Outside, the garden hums with breeze and sun. Your steps echo gently beneath you, muffled by the presence of so many leaves. Tropical plants crowd the space in patient stillness, their wide fronds stretching out in all directions. Ferns lean toward the filtered sun, their delicate tendrils trembling with the slightest movement. Water pools gently in the cups of their leaves, glinting in the light. Not the sweetness of fruit, but of living things, of roots, of old soil, of the slow exhale of green life. A faded watering can rests on a nearby shelf, its metal dulled by years of use. You do not touch it. You only notice it. The fountain no longer flows, but rainwater has collected in its bowl, now filled with tiny floating leaves and the occasional drifting insect. It smells of the larger garden, of lavender and sun, of earth and movement. But inside, the stillness holds. Light flickers across your lap. A leaf falls from above and lands beside you, its edges curled inward. You pick it up, examine its fine lines, and let it fall again. It is enough to notice, enough to be still. The conservatory asks nothing from you. It offers only the comfort of warmth, of growth, of slow breathing. You stay a little longer, wrapped in that softness. You sit beside it, letting the warmth rise from the stone and enter your skin. The light through the glass has shifted, becoming lower, more golden. You pass the bromeliads again, the spider's web, the old watering can, the vines above. You carry the hush with you, a gentle presence that lingers like scent on your clothes. The conservatory does not hold you, but it gives you something weightless to take. You step once more through the archway, back into the open air, and feel the breeze again. But inside your breath, something remains, the glow of a quiet place where green things never rush. The hush of the conservatory is not silent, but full of gentle presence. You begin to feel its rhythm in your chest, not a beat, but a hum, soft and steady. You place your hand on the stone and let it anchor you to the moment. Nothing needs to be done here. Near it, a spider has built a web between two fern stalks. The web trembles slightly, though there is no wind. Light catches on its threads, revealing its shape only in glimmers. The spider is nowhere to be seen, but the web remains, a small reminder that even here, where things seem unmoving, life is always at work. You rise and walk toward them, each step cushioned by moss that has crept between the stones. You pause, watching a droplet tremble before slipping into the center of one plant. No breeze touches this place, yet everything moves, slowly, carefully, in rhythms too soft to notice unless you stop completely. And so, you stop, you breathe. You listen to nothing in particular. Along the sides of the walkway, terracotta pots are arranged in calm disorder, filled with orchids, creeping ivy, and other plants whose names you may not know. Some bloom in soft colors. Others sleep quietly in leaf and stem. Inside are clippings of various plants, their stems suspended in water. Some have taken root, sending out pale tendrils. Others are just beginning, their leaves tight with potential. A small notebook rests nearby, open to a page filled with names and dates written in soft pencil. The handwriting is old-fashioned, looping, and gentle. You do not read the words. You let the presence of the page speak for itself. This is a place that remembers, that tends not only to plants, but to time, carefully, and without fanfare. Inside, the air is heavier, filled with warmth and moisture that clings to the skin like a soft mist. Tiny beads of condensation gather on the glass, tracing slow paths downward. You run your hand gently along a pot filled with jasmine, and the touch releases a fragrance so light it feels like a memory. Somewhere nearby, a drip falls from a pipe, striking the floor with a soft tap that repeats every few seconds. This slow rhythm joins the chorus of subtle sounds, the whisper of leaves, the creak of wooden shelves, the occasional sigh of steam from an old watering system. The glass catches the light from every angle, scattering golden hues across leaves and paths. It is like stepping into a quiet cathedral of green, where everything breathes more slowly and time thickens in the air. The floor is made of stone, worn smooth by decades of footsteps and watering cans. The warmth inside the conservatory is comforting, like the embrace of late afternoon sun. A narrow bench sits beneath a pane of colored glass, casting amber and rose shadows across its surface. You sit down slowly, letting the stillness settle around your shoulders. Overhead, vines have crept along the beams, their leaves creating shifting mosaics of green and gold. You tilt your head back and let your gaze rest on the ceiling. The light filtering through is soft and fragmented, like sunlight falling through water. It gives the space a dreamlike shimmer. The world outside continues, but within this glass house, everything holds its breath. To your left, a group of bromeliads huddle in a patch of dappled sunlight, their red and yellow blooms rising like quiet flames. The conservatory smells of earth and sweetness. As you walk further in, you pass a shelf filled with glass jars. In a far corner of the conservatory, a tall banana plant stands beside a cracked fountain basin. Above, a skylight opens slightly, letting in a slow trickle of fresh air. And when you finally rise to leave, you do so without hurry. Behind a tangle of wisteria and stone, where the path narrows and the scent of still water begins to rise, there lies a quiet pond. You reach it after a slow walk through filtered light, where every footstep lands on soft moss and fallen leaves. The breeze lessens here. The world hushes itself in the presence of something older than sound. The lily pond reveals itself without drama, its mirror-like surface, a perfect reflection of the sky above. A frog rests on one of the lily pads, unmoving, as though sculpted from moss and patience. The patterns have no urgency, no destination. They exist briefly, then vanish without a trace. You reach out and let your fingers brush its edge. The stone is smooth in some places, rough in others, a testament to its patient watching. You glance up, catching the brief shimmer of wings before they vanish into shadow. A cluster of ivy has begun to grow along the stone border, its leaves spilling over in gentle cascades. Nearby, an old copper watering can lies half covered in leaves. It is no longer used, yet still rests in its place, quietly belonging. The garden here does not discard the past. It lets it remain, settled into the earth like roots. You take in the whole scene, the pond, the lily, the weathered bench, and feel the weight of everything and nothing. There is peace in that balance. Their presence is fleeting, like a note half played, yet it adds to the fullness of the hour. The lily appear to float in light rather than water. Reflections grow longer, richer, yet more transparent. The world feels layered, like veils of silk drawn slowly over one another. You rise slowly from the bench, not because the moment is over, but because your body is ready to move again. You take one last look across the surface of the pond, letting your breath match its rhythm, deep, wide, quiet. The stillness has entered you. You carry it as gently as the pond carries the sky. The light begins to shift, turning softer, warmer. Shadows stretch and mingle on the pond's surface. You are not marking time. You are floating in it. Each step is softened by moss and memory. The trees sway gently overhead. The air remains cool and fragrant. As you pass beneath the arch once more, you do not feel that you are leaving something. You feel as though something has been given to you, wrapped in stillness, held in quiet. The bench remains, the lily bloom, the water reflects, and within you, a calm space has opened, vast and soft, waiting only for rest. And the pond, with its unmoving lily and whispering reflections, feels like a place untouched by any clock or chime. It simply holds the hour, whatever it may be. How many others have sat where you sit now, lulled by the stillness of the pond, drawn into its quiet orbit? The thought brings no sense of distance or time, only connection. You are not the first to pause here, and you will not be the last. The bench holds memory and silence, just as the water holds light. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to feel the warmth of the sun on your face more clearly. The scent of the pond surrounds you, cool, faintly floral, touched by earth. It is the scent of late hours and long silences. It calms without trying, like a forgotten lullaby. Occasionally, a leaf falls from the tree above and lands upon the water, spinning slowly before coming to rest among the lily. The pond receives it all, light, leaf, breeze, with a stillness that feels deep and complete. It does not seek to explain or change. It climbs with the careful slowness of something that knows no hurry, then rests, letting its shell warm beneath the sun. You watch it without needing to understand. Its stillness becomes part of the scene, another element in the quiet composition. A ripple passes beneath it, stirred by nothing in particular, then disappears again. The pond remains whole. Its peace is not fragile, but generous. It gives and gives, asking nothing. Even the wind seems to soften here. It only reflects, absorbs, and continues. You find yourself breathing more slowly, shoulders softened, thoughts suspended. You pause. There is no need to hurry. You've entered a space where stillness is the only motion, and time thins into quiet. A stone bench waits by the water's edge, its surface shaded by the wide leaves of a nearby tree. You approach slowly and sit, letting your weight settle. From this vantage point, the pond becomes a wide, patient presence. Dozens of white lily float calmly, their petals open to the sky. Around them, round green pads hold beads of water like small offerings. Beneath the surface, golden fish drift lazily, moving in loops that never disturb the glassy calm. The pond does not react to your arrival. It simply continues, embracing your presence without notice or expectation. You let your gaze rest on a single lily, its delicate petals pale against the dark green water. A tiny droplet slides down its edge and falls silently, creating a ripple that fades as quickly as it forms. The sound is barely there. A dragonfly darts by, its wings humming faintly, catching the sunlight in sharp flashes before vanishing again. The entire scene moves with an unspoken rhythm, like breath drawn in and released without urgency. You feel yourself sink into it. The bench beneath you feels cool and steady, and you place your hands loosely in your lap. Across the pond, reeds sway gently in the light wind, their shadows long and bending in the late afternoon sun. You glance down at the water beside your feet and notice tiny rings appearing and disappearing, insects skimming, fish surfacing, air meeting water for a moment before parting again. The bench has likely stood here for decades, perhaps longer, weathered by sun and rain, moss and frost. A turtle emerges slowly from beneath the lily and makes its way toward a flat stone near the edge. A pair of small birds flutter into the tree above, rustling the branches as they settle. You lean back slightly and let your eyes travel along the edge of the pond. As the sun lowers further, the pond begins to glow with the soft gold of evening. You walk back along the path, leaving the pond behind, though it follows you in silence. Beyond the lily pond, past a cluster of yew trees and a bend in the gravel path, the garden narrows into a corridor of green. Here, tall hedges give way to an old stone wall, nearly hidden by a thick curtain of ivy. Its wood is gray with age, the iron hinges dulled but intact. Stone fragments line the sides of the path, pieces of old balustrades, toppled urns, a lion's head carved from marble now resting among ferns. They are not placed with order, but left where they settled, as if gently forgotten. You follow the sound and find a broken fountain basin tucked into a corner, fed by a narrow stream that still flows. Its tendrils twist and weave through cracks and crevices, connecting present to past with quiet insistence. A portion of the wall is exposed, revealing faded carvings, perhaps part of a once decorated border or the edge of a forgotten doorway. You clear a small space and sit, feeling the unevenness of the surface beneath you. It is cool, textured with age, and surprisingly comfortable. A few birds begin to chirp in the distance, but they do not break the spell of the space. Their songs seem to come from elsewhere, softened by the layers of leaves above. You rest your hands on your knees and breathe in the mossy air. You are not thinking, not analyzing, not remembering. You are simply here, with the stones and leaves, the soft rustle of ivy, and the hush of long-past hours. The place holds you gently. From here, you can see the entire courtyard, the fragments, the basin, the twisting vines, the old sundial leaning slightly, as if listening. You make your way back past the sundial, past the broken fountain and the robed statue, back through the stone path where the garden sleeps. The gate creaks again as you ease it open, and the ivy rustles lightly as you pass beneath. Nothing rushes. Nothing changes. The wall behind you remains covered in green, its secrets undisturbed. As you step back onto the wider path, the light grows brighter again, and the distant sound of the garden returns. But you carry the hush within you, calm and whole. There is a sense that this place was once tended with great care, then gently released back to nature. You do not look back. You do not need to. The hidden garden has given you what it meant to share, not in words, not in memories, but in the weightless sense of time slowed, softened, and wrapped in green. With each step forward, the quiet lingers like mist on your skin. The birds sing again. The leaves flutter overhead. And you walk on, not away from something, but gently back into the flow of the day, carrying a secret you do not need to name. Now it lives somewhere in between, not wild, not structured, simply quiet, simply enduring. You run your hand lightly across the stone, tracing patterns with fingertips. The ivy does not hide. It protects. What lies beneath is not gone. It is simply resting, wrapped in green. The water collects in the stone before slipping away beneath a grate covered in leaves. This one is tilted, its base slightly sunken into the ground. The metal gnomon is bent, yet it still casts a shadow when the sun breaks through the leaves. The dial face is cracked but legible. Time here does not keep track. It offers a suggestion, then steps aside. You kneel beside it and notice a lizard basking in a patch of sun, perfectly still. Even the animals seem to know this place is meant for pausing, for noticing, for letting moments settle. Around the edges, moss has grown thick, and tiny ferns unfurl in the damp shade. You crouch beside it, watching a single leaf drift across the surface. The moment is small, but whole. You do not need to move. The world turns here without asking anything in return. You move among them slowly, not disturbing the stillness, but becoming part of it. The air carries the scent of damp earth and aged stone. Above, birds do not call, and even the wind moves gently, careful not to stir the quiet too loudly. You pause beside a fallen column and breathe in the silence. The gate stands slightly ajar, as though forgotten, but not entirely closed. You reach out and push it open gently. It creaks, not with protest, but with memory. On the other side, a narrow stone passage leads into a more secluded part of the garden. The light here is softer, dappled through overgrown branches above. Each step forward feels like entering a hidden layer of time, preserved by leaves and shadow. Its surface is uneven, with patches of moss and time-worn mortar peeking through the dense leaves. You approach slowly, letting your fingers trail along the edges of the path. The ivy shifts slightly in the breeze, its leaves whispering a soft greeting, as if the wall behind it holds more than stone. Something in the air feels hushed and expectant. The ivy moves as you brush past it, parting just enough to reveal a low, arched gate. This part of the garden is quieter still. A small statue emerges from the undergrowth, its surface softened by years of moss and rain. It depicts a robed figure, perhaps a nymph or a muse, holding an empty basin. The water that once filled it is long gone, but the basin now holds fallen leaves, curled and dry, nestled like offerings. You pause beside it, studying the way time has shaped its face. The features are blurred, but the posture is peaceful, hands held in, still welcome. You do not try to guess its history. Instead, you sit beside it on a low stone ledge, letting your presence join a long list of quiet visitors. Nearby, a trickle of water sounds softly, almost hidden beneath the hush. Above the fountain, the ivy has begun to creep along the stone once more, reaching from the outer wall toward this inner place. In the center of this hidden space stands an old sundial, different from the one you saw before. A stone bench sits opposite the sundial, partially covered by ivy and leaf litter. As you sit, the light shifts again. Sunlight filters through the trees in golden shafts, casting dappled patterns on the stone. Eventually, you rise. Slowly, without noise, without ceremony. The ivy wall fades behind you, tucked once more into shadow and stillness. The path meanders gently downhill, past beds of lavender and thyme, until it opens into a sunny clearing framed by orange trees. Their branches form a soft canopy above, casting moving patterns of shade upon the ground. The scent meets you before the space fully reveals itself, a tender blend of citrus peel and warm leaves. You pause at the edge of the grove. The light has changed again, becoming golden and thick like late afternoon honey. Beneath the trees, an old wooden table waits in a pool of sunlight, a silver teapot resting at its center, steaming faintly. Some branches dip low, heavy with ripeness, their leaves trembling in the breeze. You watch them sway and do not move. The tea warms your hands. A butterfly drifts past, circling twice before landing on the edge of a nearby blossom. You notice it, but you do not reach. Observation becomes its own form of stillness. There is nothing to improve, nothing to change. The color of the grove has deepened into a rich amber, and the air is cooler on your skin. You place your cup back on the table, the soft clink of porcelain the only sound. You brush a few petals from your lap, letting them fall gently to the ground. The light has turned more golden now, more fleeting. You step out from beneath the tree canopy, onto the gravel path once more. Behind you, the table remains, the pot still warm, the blossoms still falling. The grove does not hold you back. It only lingers in your breath, in the warmth behind your ribs, in the quiet you now carry. You lift the teapot, pouring a final cup. The steam rises once more, curling like breath from the earth itself. You drink it quietly, not for taste or need, but because it feels like part of the hour. You look at the trees and see not fruit or bark or leaf, but presence, the kind that asks for nothing and gives everything. The butterfly opens and closes its wings slowly, then lifts again, riding the golden air. You step forward slowly, the dry earth crunching gently beneath your feet. The orange trees sway behind you, leaves brushing gently against one another like a soft farewell. The path ahead curves and dips, leading you back toward the garden's heart. But part of you remains with the tea, with the warm cup, with the scattered petals and shifting light. The grove was never meant to be kept. It was meant to be entered, felt, and gently left. The memory will follow, fragrant, weightless, golden, steeped in stillness. The flavor deepens with the quiet, and you find yourself more present with each taste. The wood of the table is rough beneath your fingers, its surface patterned with age, ringed by faint watermarks and soft cracks. Someone once carved a small symbol into its edge, a spiral, or perhaps a flower. You trace it absent-mindedly as you drink. It feels like a quiet offering, left not to be seen, but to be found. This table has known many cups, many afternoons, many gentle moments just like this one. Fallen orange blossoms are scattered across the ground, their white petals fresh and fragrant. You turn your head slightly, listening. The call is not repeated, and the silence that follows feels deeper for it. Your fingers relax, your shoulders soften. Above, the sunlight filters through a thick web of leaves, casting shadows that dance lightly across your face and chest. The scent of oranges grows stronger, mingling with the last of the steam. You close your eyes, not in sleep, but in simple presence. The grove hums around you. The trees sway. The bees move. Somewhere, another petal falls, landing without sound. You remain still, letting the moment thicken like syrup in the warmth. The wind shifts again. A branch brushes another with a dry rustle. Somewhere in the distance, a gate creaks open or closed, but none of it pulls you from the moment. The tea is still warm. The light is still kind. And the grove, with all its quiet motion, holds you like a memory you did not know you missed. Time here is not counted. It is steeped like the tea, slow, fragrant, gentle. A wooden chair, aged by sun and weather, invites your presence without expectation. You ease into it, feeling the curve of its frame fit naturally against your back. Around you, the grove hums with quiet fullness. Leaves rustle softly overhead. A bee moves from blossom to blossom. Somewhere nearby, water trickles faintly from a hidden source. It is a place for sitting, not speaking. A place to receive the hour without needing to shape it. On the table, the silver teapot glows in the golden light, its surface gently clouded with age. 2 small cups sit beside it, porcelain thin and worn at the edges. Its warmth spreads gently through your chest, then your limbs. You exhale without thought. Around you, the shadows shift again as a breeze moves through the grove. A few blossoms fall from the tree above, landing lightly on the table, on your lap, on the ground. The moment seems arranged, though nothing has been planned. The world here does not follow pattern or rule. It simply unfolds, petal by petal, moment by moment. You reach forward and pour slowly. The tea flows in a soft arc, curling with steam as it settles. The scent rises, orange peel, jasmine, perhaps a hint of clove. You lift the cup but do not drink yet. You hold it near your face, letting the warmth linger on your skin. The steam curls into the air, disappearing into the moving light. It feels less like a drink and more like a pause made visible. When you do sip, the tea is delicate and deep, the kind that seems brewed not just with leaves, but with sunlight and time. Beyond the table, the grove continues. Orange trees in loose lines, their fruit catching the light like tiny lanterns. You sip again, slower now, as if the tea might vanish if hurried. Farther off, a bird calls once, clear and low. You rest the empty cup on the table, letting your hands fall loosely to your lap. When you open your eyes, nothing has changed, yet everything feels slower. The light is lower now, leaning toward evening. Eventually, you rise. The chair creaks softly beneath you. You walk onward, not away, but deeper into the hush of the day. Beyond a worn stone archway, the courtyard waited like a secret kept well. You stepped through slowly, as though the air had thickened into velvet. Its carved rim was adorned with moss and time-softened scrollwork, the remnants of another era. 4 potted lemon trees stood evenly spaced around it, their slender trunks twisting slightly, their glossy leaves stirred by the faintest wind. Their fruit hung heavy and golden, catching the last of the day's light. Their round shapes leaned against the wall, mottled with lichen and age, like resting figures in conversation. You imagined they once held water, oil, or grain, now replaced by nothing but their own enduring presence. A lizard darted between them and disappeared. A single feather drifted down and landed beside it, unnoticed but whole. The ordinary here held reverence, as if everything was part of a long ceremony without beginning or end. You observed without judgment, only quiet recognition. You turned once more to look at the fountain, the trees, the urns, the columns. You did not catalogue them. You did not name them. They were not pieces to remember, but elements of a single breath, held for as long as needed. The hush deepened, but it did not grow dark. The courtyard glowed still, not with light, but with presence. You allowed yourself to feel it, and nothing more. The air held the cool scent of stone and the sweetness of citrus bloom. You did not pass through yet. You looked back, not out of reluctance, but out of reverence. The courtyard did not change or shift. It remained exactly as it had been. You carried no words with you. There was no story to tell. The quiet had said all that needed saying. You let the breath in your chest settle, then exhale fully. Then, without hurry, you stepped through. The scent of warm herbs rose faintly as the air cooled. The hush of the courtyard had become part of your breath, part of your pace. You did not need to look back again. It was not a departure, but a continuation. The silence walked with you now, slow and steady. Around you, the garden deepened, but the heart of the courtyard, its stillness, its grace, its long patience, lingered within. It would stay there quietly, through the evening, through the dusk, through the sleep to come. You passed it without sitting, letting its quiet presence stay undisturbed. Your presence folded into the courtyard's memory like another petal falling from the rose arch. You paused again near the lemon trees, watching a single leaf spin in the light. It hovered in the air longer than it should have, as though the courtyard itself resisted letting go. Eventually, it landed, soundless. Nothing in this place hurried. Even gravity seemed to move with care. The ivy clung not in desperation, but in rest, its tendrils slow and certain. Each leaf caught the dimming light in small reflections. Behind it, a narrow gate of iron stood slightly open. Vines curled across its frame. Through its arch, a shaded path beckoned, yet you did not feel the need to go. The courtyard held you gently, not tightly, like a place you had forgotten but always known. You stood once more and wandered slowly back to the fountain. The dry basin reflected the sky faintly, a pale mirror of light and stone. You leaned closer, touching the carved rim lightly. The silence here was not absence, but presence made still. It asked for nothing, explained nothing, only existed. You exhaled into that stillness, not to change it, but to match its rhythm. You stepped closer, not to admire, but simply to be near something that remembered silence better than sound. The light had grown quieter here. Long slants of golden sun pooled over terracotta tiles. Each warmed between them, stone planters held rosemary and thyme, their small blossoms kissed by the sun. Bees moved slowly, as if the air itself encouraged them to drift rather than hurry. You passed beside the columns, letting your fingertips skim the sun-warmed surfaces. A single vine crept between the stones, reaching toward the open light. Every texture seemed softened, every edge worn round by the patience of years. The courtyard had not been designed for spectacle, but for balance and rest, and faded by the weight of centuries. Time did not pass in this square of space. It lingered, unhurried and circular, curling around the stone basin at the center and stretching outward like a breath held deep. Overhead, ivy trailed down from the villa walls, casting soft-moving shadows. The hush of the courtyard pressed gently on your senses, easing every thought. The fountain stood in dignified silence, no water flowing, only stillness cradled within its low basin. A colonnade framed one side of the square, stone pillars standing shoulder to shoulder in quiet grace. You came to a bench, carved of pale marble, set beneath an arch of climbing roses. Some of the petals had fallen, forming a soft scatter on the tiled ground like a slow rain of faded color. You sat down carefully, the stone cool but welcoming, and allowed your body to become still. The sun filtered through leaves above, dappling your skin in patterns of shadow and warmth. The hush was not empty, but filled with small things: the rustle of ivy, the hum of distant wings, the weight of quiet. Your breathing fell into rhythm with the light, long and slow. To your left, in the far corner of the courtyard, stood a cluster of aged terracotta jars. The light had shifted further now. Shadows grew longer across the tiles, softening their definition. Beside the fountain, another bench stood in deeper shade, half overgrown with trailing ivy. As you moved slowly across the courtyard once more, your footsteps made small sounds on the tile, soft and fading quickly. You did not disturb the air. The last sunlight glowed like honey across the stone. The warmth began to fade from the surface beneath your feet, leaving only the memory of heat. When you reached the open gate, you placed your hand lightly on the frame. It was rough with rust and vine, cool to the touch. Beyond the gate, the path curled into green shadow. But something remained behind you, not in place, but in rhythm. The hallway curved gently, away from the fading garden light and into the villa's stone interior. You walked slowly, your steps cushioned by worn rugs and the hush of evening. The walls were cool beneath soft candlelight, lined with framed tapestries and faded frescoes. Ahead, a pair of wooden doors stood half open. Beyond them, a warm amber glow spilled outward, pulsing gently like a sleeping breath. You entered the library not with intent, but with quiet invitation. You sat carefully, letting your body sink into its deep familiarity. It folded into the library's softness, like another texture of stillness. The ink had dried long ago. A wax seal lay beside it, its design faded, its color dim. You stood and wandered toward it, your hand hovering briefly above the paper. The pages held no urgency to be read. You did not reach for them. They were part of the room's breath, not its task. One lay half open on a reading stand, its language foreign, its letters looping like vines. Behind you, the library remained unchanged. Its shelves still stood, its clock unmoved, its pages unread. But something had softened within you, something drawn from the rhythm of candlelight and the hush of untold stories. You walked slowly, not toward anything, but with the softness still around you, the kind of quiet you carry like fabric across your shoulders, the kind that folds into dreams without waking. Somewhere, a door closed gently. Somewhere, a star blinked through a distant pane of glass. And the night continued, slow and sure. The page had not turned in years. It would wait many more. You sat in silence, eyes wandering but mind quiet. Time moved differently here, not forward, not backward, but softly outward, like a ripple through silk. The candle flickered once, but did not fade. Their words remained private, not secret. You imagined someone once paused here, candlelight dancing on their knuckles, as they wrote without needing to finish. The main room had dimmed further. The candles now flickered more gently, their flames shorter, their glow deeper. You paused near the center of the room, letting your eyes pass one last time over the shelves, the chair, the desk, the open window. The library had not told you anything. It had not needed to. It had held you, allowed you, asked nothing. That was its gift. You inhaled the scent of paper, wax, and wood. Then, with quiet steps, you turned toward the door and began to walk away. The desk still remembered them. The quill remained balanced on its rest, as if waiting for a hand to return without demand. You leaned your head back slightly, eyes following the grain of the wood across the ceiling. The steps were steep, carpeted in thick velvet now faded to ash blue. You placed one foot on the first step, then another, letting the silence guide you. At the top, a small landing opened into a rounded gallery filled with low bookshelves and deep cushions along the wall. A single candle glowed in a niche, its light drawing a soft circle on the stone floor. You sat again, the cushion gently receiving your weight. Above you, a narrow skylight framed the stars. One flickered, then stilled. Carved beams stretched above you like ribs of a slumbering creature. Between them, shadows pooled gently, undisturbed. The light did not rush into corners. It wandered slowly, touching only what welcomed it. Even your thoughts moved differently here, not in sharp lines, but in slow loops like rings on water. The arms of the chair were worn smooth by decades of quiet hands. Nearby, a small side table held a porcelain teacup, still clean, as though waiting for a guest who had stepped away long ago and never returned. You did not reach for it. It was not for drinking, but for remembering. You rested your hands in your lap, gazing toward the candlelit shelves, the breathing curtain, the unmoving clock. The hush deepened with every breath. The room welcomed without ceremony. It held no urgency, only the soft companionship of paper, wax, and the long echo of thought. Tall shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each filled with leather-bound volumes in hues of sepia, deep green, and faded maroon. Their spines were cracked and worn, but not weary. The books did not beg to be opened. They only offered their presence. Between the shelves, wooden ladders rested against rails, long unused yet steady. A few volumes lay open on a wide reading table, their pages yellowed and edges curled gently inward. Dust motes drifted in the candlelight above them, as though words had risen and stilled in the air. No pages turned. No voices stirred, only the scent of time. A dozen candles glowed along the long table, each held in simple brass holders. Their flames flickered slowly, casting quiet shadows across the wood. You paused at the table, letting your fingers hover over the books, not to read, but to feel the texture of their stillness. One cover bore a faint embossed sigil, its lines worn into near invisibility. Another had a pressed sprig of lavender tucked beneath the cover, long dried but still fragrant. You did not lift them. They had waited long enough and did not need movement now. The room allowed you to notice, not disturb. In the far corner, a fireplace stood unlit, its hearth swept clean, its grate old but sturdy. On the mantel sat a small clock, silent, its hands unmoved. You walked past it slowly, noting the soft creak of the wooden floor beneath your steps. To the right of the fireplace, a tall window opened to the evening air. White curtains drifted inward, breathing softly with the night breeze. You stepped closer. The garden beyond was dark now, touched only by the glow of distant lanterns. Crickets hummed beyond the glass, steady and low, like a rhythm meant for resting minds. A chair stood near the window, high-backed, cushioned, its fabric faded to a muted green. Somewhere high above, a faint creak echoed, perhaps a shifting beam or a bird outside. It did not stir alarm. On a small writing desk against the wall rested a feather quill and a half-filled journal. Between two shelves, a narrow alcove opened to reveal a curved staircase climbing upward. The books up here were smaller, hand-bound, many without titles. Some had edges tinted gold, others frayed like linen sleeves. Eventually, you rose, stepped slow, and returned down the staircase. The hallway outside welcomed you again with silence. A narrow staircase curved gently upward along the western wall of the villa, its steps smooth from centuries of quiet use. You climbed slowly, your hand brushing the aged balustrade, the stone cool beneath your fingers. Each step carried you closer to the light, a soft amber glow that filtered down through open arches above. It was wide enough to lean upon, and you did so gently, resting your arms and letting your gaze follow the fading light. Below, the paths of the garden curved gently through groves and hedges, their outlines softened by the deepening dusk. You returned the glass to the table and sat in a nearby chair, its wrought iron back curved like a petal. It was gentle and carried with it the scent of night-blooming flowers and something older, perhaps the breath of stone. You rose and moved toward it, drawn not by decision, but by rhythm. As you sat, you noticed how the terrace stones beneath your feet had darkened with the descending night. The wine had warmed slightly, deepened in flavor, become part of the evening. The sky had turned to a soft indigo, stars blooming like tiny seeds across its surface. You breathed in deeply, then let it go, not to empty yourself, but to blend into the quiet. The terrace would hold this hush long after you left. You turned slowly, not to depart, but to return inward. Each step away from the edge was a closing of the day, not a farewell. The warmth of the stone, the fading scent of rosemary, the softness of wine, all remained with you. You did not feel the need for more. Instead, you stood, your movements slow and unhurried, and returned to the edge of the terrace wall. Below, the garden had begun to dissolve into night, its outlines softened, its details surrendered to shadow. Yet it did not feel gone. It remained, just quieter, like a page turned slowly, its story continuing unseen but understood. Above, a small lantern hung from a wrought iron hook, its flame protected by glass, its glow soft and gold. You did not light it. The evening held enough light for now. You carried no thoughts, no conclusions, only the rhythm of twilight, the softness of stone, and the memory of stillness. Somewhere, a door creaked open. Somewhere, a candle flickered. The villa exhaled with you, slowly and full. And above, the stars continued their silent bloom, unhurried and whole. You leaned back, your hands resting beside you, and let your gaze rise once more to the deepening sky. When you opened your eyes again, the colors had deepened. The sky was now a muted violet, layered with orange and a hint of rose. The garden below glowed faintly in the shifting light. You watched as the first evening stars began to appear, barely visible, like old memories returning to familiar places. Their flicker was subtle, barely daring to break the stillness. The seat was cool, but you did not mind. From here, the terrace opened fully before you, the edge of the world meeting the fading sky. The sun had dipped lower now, its last arc melting into the hills. Shadows stretched long and tender. Nothing moved quickly. The trees, the sky, even the light itself seemed content to pause, as though the day did not wish to end too soon. A lone bird passed overhead, its wings slow, its path easy. You watched it until it disappeared beyond the trees. Time seemed to dissolve into color, into the soft layering of day into night, into the space where nothing more needed to happen. The air was different here, touched by the hush of approaching dusk. In its place, a silver hush began to form, carried by the wind and folded into the folds of the hills. Crickets had begun their quiet song, joining the terrace's hush with a steady, simple rhythm. A moth drifted lazily past the lantern, circling once, then vanishing into shadow. The quiet was complete, but never empty. It was filled with the weightless things that dusk carries: breath, memory, softness, and the sense that all things have paused together. At the top, an open terrace unfolded before you, wide and still, wrapped in the golden hush of early evening. You paused at the final step, letting your eyes settle into the view without rush or reason. The terrace overlooked the western edges of the garden, where olive trees grew in loose clusters, and the land stretched toward low hills in the distance. The sun hovered just above the horizon, casting its light in long strokes of amber and rose. Each tree cast a tall shadow, soft-edged and still. The stone floor beneath your feet had held the day's warmth, and now released it slowly, like a memory easing into silence. You stepped forward, each footfall a soft rhythm on the weathered surface. The air was tinged with the faintest scent of olives, warm dust, and distant lavender. A low wall enclosed the terrace, built of the same honey-colored stone as the villa itself. To your left, a large urn stood filled with trailing rosemary and pale white flowers that had only just opened. Their scent rose faintly in the cooling air. A small table stood nearby, round and simple, its wooden top darkened with age. Upon it sat a single glass of deep red wine, untouched. You did not question its presence. It felt as though it had always been there, waiting without expectation. You lifted the glass slowly, the evening light catching in its surface, casting ruby reflections across the stone. You held it for a moment, then sipped without sound, letting the warmth settle into your breath. The flavor was gentle, aged and soft, with notes of earth and time. It held no urgency. You closed your eyes briefly, letting the breeze move across your face. At the far end of the terrace, a low bench had been built into the wall, its surface smooth and dappled with moss. The last traces of sunlight were now only a suggestion on the horizon. You took one last sip from the glass and placed it back upon the table. You lingered for a moment longer, letting your hands rest upon the cool stone. As you stepped through the archway and descended the stair, the terrace faded behind you like the last light of the evening. As you descended from the terrace, twilight deepened around the villa like a softening breath. Pathway unfolded before you, gently curving toward the eastern side of the garden. The stones beneath your feet felt cool now, the warmth of the day slowly fading. You walked slowly, without aim or urgency, guided only by the hush that followed each step. The sky above had turned to a deepening blue, and the first stars shimmered faintly between swaying branches. With every breath, the hush around you seemed to deepen, inviting your senses to quiet, your thoughts to drift, and your pace to ease beyond a narrow arbor where vines curled in quiet clusters. You came upon a place half forgotten, nestled into the folds of the garden. The ground here had once been tiled with colored mosaics, though many had broken, scattered, or sunk beneath the soil. Still, they remained, small pieces of glass and stone, catching the last light like fragments of frozen time. Shades of deep red, faded gold, and ocean green peeked between weeds and moss, their patterns softened by age. You paused, crouching gently, and let your hand rest above one square, feeling not its texture, but its presence. The pieces did not form images anymore. If once they had told stories, those stories now lived only in suggestion. A curve here, a shimmer there, a rhythm of shape and shade. It was enough. The mosaics did not ask to be restored. They simply continued to exist, quietly, beneath layers of lichen and memory. You imagined footsteps long ago, pressing against these very stones. their edges sharper, their colors brighter, their meanings clearer. Yet the wornness now held its own beauty. Time had softened them into something kinder, something that no longer spoke but listened. Around the edges of the space stood fragments of stone walls, half covered in ivy and softened by moss. A carved pillar leaned at an angle, its base surrounded by fallen petals. Nearby, a small stone bench had cracked in two, its halves resting against each other like old friends leaning into sleep. You sat there, not for comfort, but for nearness. The air was still, touched by the scent of damp earth and jasmine. You let your gaze wander across the scattered patterns beneath your feet, not to understand, but to feel the memory they held in silence. Above, the canopy of trees swayed lightly in the breeze, their branches stirring only enough to remind you they were alive. Small insects drifted through the air, their wings catching the starlight in slow pulses. Somewhere nearby, the faint sound of water echoed, a fountain perhaps, or a distant stream winding its way beneath the garden's surface. The sound was distant enough to seem imagined, yet present enough to soothe. You leaned back slightly, letting your hands press gently into the moss, letting its dampness ground you. There was nothing to recall, only the comfort of remaining. Still, you let your thoughts drift now, not toward the past or future, but into something slower, something circular. You imagined the hands that once placed these tiles, one by one, in careful patterns, long before the first tree had grown tall. Above them, perhaps they were placed without hurry, shaped by repetition and rhythm. The tiles themselves had been touched by light, rain, footsteps, time. They had heard voices rise and fade, laughter come and go. And now they heard none of it. They listened only to the quiet, held gently by soil and sky, content in their slow fading. A nearby wall held a set of embedded fragments, ceramic shards and worn pottery, pressed together like a collage of forgotten moments. You stood and approached them, your fingers tracing the outline of a faded blue circle, a curve of terracotta, a sliver of white glaze. It reminded you of a map, not of places, but of memory itself, irregular and incomplete, but full. The longer you looked, the less you needed to see. The arrangement of these simple pieces held a softness that words could not name. You allowed yourself to stand there for a while, not analyzing, not remembering, just being. At your feet, a broken tile bore the faint imprint of a sandal. Whether it was deliberate or accidental, you could not tell. The impression had worn nearly. Flat, but it remained, a mark of presence, long gone but still here. You knelt and touched it gently, as if in greeting. You thought of all the footsteps that had passed through this place, none of them in a rush. Each step had left behind a trace, a whisper of motion that now lingered in stillness. You exhaled slowly, allowing your breath to match the quiet, letting it settle into the cracks between stone. Night had fully arrived now. The stars above were clearer, and a soft coolness wrapped around your shoulders like a shawl. You turned once more to the mosaics, their colors dimmed by darkness, yet no less beautiful. They had become part of the garden, not separate from it. They belonged not to history, but to this moment, to you, sitting here, listening to the hush. You no longer needed to imagine their past. They offered something more precious, the experience of noticing, of pausing, of letting the world be. Small and slow, you closed your eyes for a moment and simply breathed. When you stood again, you did so gently, careful not to disturb the petals or stones beneath your feet. You traced one final glance across the patterns, then let your gaze lift to the sky. A breeze passed through the leaves, and for a moment it sounded like a sigh. You did not look back. There was no need. The mosaics would remain as they were, quiet, humble, slowly crumbling into something more enduring than form. You walked slowly down the path, the rhythm of your steps blending with the memory of all those who had walked before you. As you moved away, the garden folded gently around your path once more. The mosaic space disappeared behind a veil of ivy and night, not lost, but at rest. You carried no image of it with you, only a soft trace, like a smoothed edge of stone against your palm. The path ahead curved into shadow, and your steps followed, without rush. In your chest, the silence of that place remained, like a low note held just beneath hearing. It would travel with you now, a mosaic of memory, not arranged in pattern, but felt in stillness. The evening had settled fully over the villa and its garden, folding each corner of the estate into deeper tones of shadow and rest. From the quiet of the mosaic court, your feet returned to the softer paths. Somewhere in the distance, a door had closed gently, and the air now carried a deeper hush. A low wooden table near the side of a stone wall held a row of oil lanterns. Their glass panels rippled with age. You reached for one, your hand steady, your breath slow. The wick caught easily, casting a small, warm glow that shimmered gently. On your fingers, the lantern flickered quietly, its golden light dancing across the stones at your feet. You held it carefully, feeling the weight of the metal handle, the slight warmth gathering near your wrist. The flame swayed gently with your motion, casting faint circles of light along the path as you walked. Each step revealed only a few feet ahead, while the rest remained folded in velvet shadow. It was not frightening. The darkness felt soft, like the underside of leaves at night. You walked slowly, not to see farther, but to remain within the glow. The garden had changed with the night. What had been clear and distinct in the sunlight now became suggestion and silhouette. The shrubs along the path rustled lightly, their leaves stirred by the soft brush of wind. Above, the trees formed dark canopies against the sky, where stars had begun to pierce through, one by one. You paused near a cluster of lavender, brushing your lantern light gently across their pale blossoms. Even in the night air, their scent drifted upward, calm and familiar. You bent slightly, drawing the scent into your lungs, like a memory you wished to keep. As you continued along the path, the gravel beneath your steps crunched softly, a steady rhythm that echoed your breath. The lantern cast elongated shadows on the ground, which swayed and shifted with every movement. To your left, an old statue stood partially hidden among the ivy. In the lantern's light, its features seemed softened, worn down not by neglect but by time. You did not stop to inspect it closely. You only passed by, letting it be part of the night. The statue had stood there for many seasons, and would remain long after your steps had faded. The path curved now toward the lower garden, where stone steps led gently downward into a grove of old cypress trees. You descended carefully, the light bobbing slightly with each step. The trees stood tall and close together, their trunks dark and narrow. Here, the night deepened. The air grew cooler, filled with the scent of earth and moss. You moved slowly, letting your lantern reveal small details: a snail on a stone, a fallen branch, the shimmer of dew on a leaf. Everything around you was still, yet it felt as though the garden itself breathed quietly in the dark at the base of the grove. The path widened once more, leading you to a clearing bordered by low hedges. You paused at its center, holding the lantern at your side. Above you, the stars had multiplied. They seemed closer now, as if the sky had bowed slightly toward the earth to meet your gaze. A soft wind moved through the trees, carrying with it a dry rustle that passed like a whispered song. You stood without speaking, listening to it, letting it wrap around you. It spoke of endings, not with sorrow, but with patience. The kind of ending that prepares for sleep. To the right of the clearing, a stone archway marked the entrance to a covered walkway. You passed beneath it, your lantern casting golden light along its walls. The arch was lined with old vines, some of them in bloom despite the hour. Their petals shone faintly, catching the light and folding it into their curves. You reached out with your free hand, fingers barely grazing one bloom. Its surface was cool and soft. The walkway curved inward, leading you along a gentle incline, toward the villa's outer edge. The hush grew deeper, the night pressing closer, yet never heavy. Eventually, the walkway opened to a broad stone landing, overlooking the eastern hills. You stopped there, the lantern held still beside you. From here, the land seemed to stretch forever, its outlines softened by distance and moonlight. The wind was steadier now, brushing past your skin like a slow exhale. You lifted the lantern. Slightly, its flame steady, casting golden warmth against the cool stone. It did not push the darkness back. It simply coexisted with it. And in that quiet balance, you felt something settle inside you. A calm that did not ask for anything more. You sat on a low wall near the edge, letting the lantern rest beside you. Its light pooled around your feet, forming a quiet circle where your thoughts could rest. You watched the stars above, how they blinked and pulsed without urgency. There was no pattern you needed to understand. Their presence was enough. Around you, the night folded in gently, layer by layer. The garden had grown still now, its creatures quiet, its leaves resting. You felt the weight of your body ease, the breath in your chest grow slower. Nothing was unfinished. Everything was held in pause dot after a time. You stood once more. The lantern's light remained warm in your hand as you began the slow walk back toward the villa. The path behind you no longer needed to be seen. It had carried you gently, and now it released you without regret. Your feet moved with the rhythm of sleep, each step softer than the last. The night no longer watched, it simply accompanied you. The flame flickered once, then settled. You approached the door, the final curve of the path marked by ivy and stone. And as you crossed the threshold, the light behind you folded itself into silence. Inside, the villa welcomed you without sound. The walls held the hush of centuries, the lantern's light casting gentle shadows across the floor. You placed it on a small wooden table, its glow now still, its warmth folded into the room. You breathed deeply once more, not out of effort, but release. The lantern had carried you, through the garden's breath, through shadow and memory. Now it rested, and so did you. The villa's corridor welcomed you with stillness. As your hand brushed the wooden frame of the door, it gave way without resistance. The room opened slowly, not brightly, but with the hush of old comfort. A gentle breeze floated in through. Open windows, carrying the scent of jasmine and the cool breath of the sleeping garden. Inside, everything waited without intention. The light was dim, and the air folded softly around the furnishings like a blanket recently lifted. You stepped quietly onto the wooden floor, which creaked faintly beneath your weight, as though sighing. In relief to be remembered once again, the bed stood near the far wall, its frame carved of dark wood, worn smooth by years of quiet use. Above it, the white canopy drifted gently, moved by the same breeze that stirred the curtains. Its shape rose and fell like the rhythm of a sleeping breath. The sheets had been turned down neatly, their linen surface cool and clean. The pillows were plump yet softened with age. You sat at the edge first, letting your hand press into the mattress. It gave just enough, without protest, as though it had waited all evening for this small act of stillness. Dot to your right, a tall window stood. Open, its shutters folded wide against the wall. A sheer curtain fluttered outward, rising and falling in time with the wind's quiet pulse. Outside, the sky had darkened into deep indigo, with only the stars and a faint glow from the garden hinting at depth. You stepped closer and rested, your hands on the sill. The scent of jasmine was stronger here, joined by the cooler tones of night air and distant stone. You breathed in slowly, allowing the breeze to pass over your skin and through your thoughts without resistance. The room itself held little ornament. A wooden wardrobe with brass handles stood in the corner, its surface marked by time. A narrow writing desk waited beneath the opposite window, its top scattered with a few forgotten papers and a quill. A small chair had been pushed slightly, askew, as if someone had risen slowly and simply never returned. On a nearby shelf, a few leather-bound books leaned together, their titles faded to softness. You touched one gently, not to open it, but to feel its quiet presence. Each item in the room spoke not of use, but of waiting. A candle burned low on a small table near the bed, its wax pooling around the base in steady stillness. Its light flickered against the wooden walls, casting long shadows that swayed like slow-moving branches. You sat again on the edge of the bed, the wood creaking softly beneath you, your breath sinking with the pulse of the flame. The breeze passed through the room without rush, curling through curtains, touching the canopy above, brushing the edges of pages left on the desk. It moved as though the room itself had lungs, exhaling the stories it remembered, inhaling the quiet it kept. You lay back slowly, allowing your body to meet the bed one moment at a time. The sheets cooled your skin, and the pillow rose to meet your head with a softness that did not ask for thanks. You turned slightly toward the open window, watching as the white curtain drifted and returned, again and again. The ceiling above bore gentle carvings in the wood, nothing grand, just arcs and lines, almost like waves. You let your eyes trace them without needing to follow. Your breath slowed, not by effort, but by echo. The room itself breathed with you. Outside, the garden remained still. The sounds of insects carried faintly through the window, a steady whisper that rose and fell like wind through reeds. Somewhere, deeper in the night, an owl moved through the air, unseen but present. The stars above had multiplied, quiet companions to the hush now folding around your limbs. You listened to them without sound, their presence like tiny lanterns above the world's slow turning. Your eyes closed for a moment, not in sleep, but in rest. You felt your body grow heavier, anchored not in weight, but in comfort. The room held you gently. It did not insist, did not demand stillness. It merely allowed it. Even the air seemed slower here, thick with peace and softened by age. Time had no sharp corners in this place. It passed not in seconds or hours, but in the drift of curtain, the flicker of candlelight, the scent of night air moving over linen. You let one arm fall to your side, your fingers brushing the cool edge of the blanket. The movement stirred nothing. Even the bed seemed to breathe more slowly, its warmth wrapping around you like dusk around a mountain dot. You opened your eyes once more, just long enough to catch the curtain rising again in the wind. In the candle's flicker, dust danced in the air, tiny motes suspended in golden arcs. You watched them briefly, then let your gaze soften once more. The darkness outside had deepened, but it did not press inward. It waited at the edge of the window, soft and watchful, letting the room remain as it was, light and breath and stillness. You did not think about tomorrow. You did not think about yesterday. Only the hush remained. Your breathing matched the rhythm of the garden now. Inhale with the jasmine. Exhale with the wind. Inhale with the flickering candle. Exhale with the sighing curtain. Each breath took you deeper into the room's quiet memory. You felt as though you had always been here, or perhaps never left. The garden's whispers had followed you inside, not to speak, but to keep you company. There was no need for story. The night itself was enough. You shifted once more beneath the blanket, and let your limbs become still. The candle's flame dipped. Once, then returned. The curtain lifted again, then fell. The stars outside turned slowly, steady in their silence. And you, within the room of open windows, drifted quietly toward sleep. Not pulled, not pushed, only carried like a boat on. The gentlest current, like a leaf on the calmest stream, like a dream that waits just past the edge of waking. The moon had risen quietly, casting its silver light across the villa and the garden beyond. You stirred gently from the stillness of the room, drawn not by sound or thought, but by something softer. A hush that called from the edge of sleep. You rose slowly, your feet brushing the floorboards with care. The air was cool, touched by the scent of jasmine still drifting through the open window. You stepped into the corridor, where shadows wrapped the stone walls in layers of silence. The lanterns were unlit. Only the moonlight guided your way. Outside, the garden had transformed beneath the night sky. What had shimmered in gold beneath? The sun now lay folded in shades of silver and blue. The hedges stood quiet, their outlines softened by dew. The stone paths glowed faintly, reflecting the light of the moon like old mirrors. You walked with quiet steps, each footfall pressing lightly into the earth. The air felt cleaner here, untouched and delicate. The sound of the wind had become a whisper, and the leaves responded with a hush of their own. You followed the path without aim, trusting the garden to lead Dot as you passed under an arch of climbing roses. Their blossoms appeared pale and ghost-like, drifting in and out of shadow. The petals seemed still, yet they moved slightly with the breeze. Not enough to notice, just enough to feel. Your hand brushed one as you passed, and it trembled without sound. Beyond the arch, the garden opened wide, a circular clearing, lined with flowering shrubs and low stone walls. In the center stood a tall sundial, its face now reading only moonlight. The shadow it once cast in day had vanished. Time here had paused. You stepped closer to the sundial, letting your gaze drift across the carved surface. The markings were faint in the darkness, but the stone felt warm beneath your fingers, not from the sun, but from memory. Around it, the garden bloomed in quiet shades. Pale irises swayed gently, their petals catching the light like fine silk. A row of white lily rested in full bloom, their fragrance mingling with the air in waves too subtle to name. You inhaled slowly, feeling the scent curl through your chest like a lullaby from the earth itself. A bench waited near the edge of the garden, half in shadow, half in silver light. You sat there without thought, letting the moment hold you. The breeze moved softly across your face, carrying the sound of distant water and the rustle of leaves. The sky above was open, filled with stars and the pale face of the moon. It looked down not as a watcher, but as a quiet companion. Around you, the night pressed close, but not heavy. It wrapped the garden in a hush so complete that even your thoughts began to rest. You closed your eyes for a moment, and when you opened them again, the garden seemed softer still. The edges of each flower had blurred slightly, as if seen through a gentle veil. The moonlight pooled around the base of trees and danced along the curves of stone. Nothing moved quickly. Nothing rushed. The insects that stirred made no sound. Even the grass, rushed by wind, seemed to fold itself more slowly. You let your hands rest in your lap, the fingers slightly curled, as if waiting for a dream to land softly in their grasp not far off. You noticed a patch of bluebells beneath a tree, their tiny bells nodding faintly in rhythm with the night. You stood once more, drawn to their soft shimmer. Each step across the lawn felt like a floating thought. The grass beneath your feet cooled your skin through the soles of your shoes. As you neared, the tree above opened its branches wider, as though offering shelter. The bluebells did not glow, but they caught the light in small, quiet ways. A gleam at the edge, a shimmer at the tip, a touch of silver on blue. You knelt beside them, not to examine, but to rest. The soil was soft beneath your knees, and the scent of grass and stone rose up to greet you. You did not reach to pick a flower. You only sat with them, as one might sit beside a friend without words. Above, the moonlight filtered through the branches, laying patterns on your shoulders and the ground around you. For a moment, everything stilled, not because it had ended, but because it had no need to begin again. You breathed in, and the air folded itself inside you like a tide. When you stood again, the night had deepened. The garden was no darker, but it felt further from the day. You followed the curved path that led past low hedges and flowering thyme. The scent was earthy and cool, like the ground after rain. A marble urn stood at the corner of the path, filled with trailing ivy and shadowed blooms. You touched its arm gently as you passed. Its surface was cold, but not unkind. Beyond it, a small gate led to a final alcove of the garden, a crescent-shaped grove filled with moonflowers in bloom, their wide petals turned upward, as if listening to the light above. You stepped among them slowly, each flower opening in complete silence. They had waited all day for this moment, to unfold not for sun, but for shadow. The air was rich with their fragrance, sweet and pale. You moved with care, letting your hands brush above their heads like a blessing. They did not stir, yet their presence filled the grove with something close to music, not heard, not seen, only felt like memory or wind or the moment before. Sleep. You reached the center of the grove and stood still. Around you, the garden glowed not with brightness, but with presence. Everything that had bloomed did so without effort. Everything that breathed did so without need. You closed your eyes and let the moment settle into you. The garden did not speak, but it understood. And in return, you did not explain, but simply remained. The petals brushed your ankles. The moon hovered just above the trees. Your breath slowed to match the rhythm of this quiet place. And the night, in its fullness, held you without question. The hour was late, though the night gave no indication of time passing. The stillness held everything in place. A shift in the air arrived gently, subtle as a breath. You noticed the change not through sound, but scent, that unmistakable fragrance of earth touched by water, the very first signs of rain. You had stepped out again, drawn not by purpose, but by quiet instinct. The garden had grown even softer. Shadows lingered along the hedgerows, and the lantern light from inside had faded behind you. All that remained now was the hush, and the waiting. The first droplets came without drama. A single sound, like a fingertip upon paper, then another, and another. You stood still near the edge of the path, head tilted slightly as the rain began to thread through the leaves above. The wind did not move. The air barely stirred. But the drops arrived one after another, forming a rhythm so slow it barely held. Together, you stepped out from beneath the overhang, and the rain greeted you like an old friend. It touched your shoulders with coolness. It found your face with care. It moved along your sleeves without weight. You began to walk again, slowly, and without direction, along a stone path that glistened with the first sheen of water. Each footstep landed quietly, softened by the dampness beneath. The hedges you passed released new aromas, rosemary warmed by the day's heat, thyme opened by moisture. Overhead, the trees whispered in response to the shifting air, there, branches barely moving. You passed a marble bench darkened by the rain, a stone gleaming like glass. The raindrops clung to every surface. They caught and held the light, even in this softened darkness. The pond came into view once more, its surface no longer still. Raindrops struck the water in tiny circles, overlapping like the slow toll of distant bells. You paused there for a long while listening. The sound was not loud, yet it filled the air completely. The garden did not resist the rain. It welcomed it without change in posture, without reaction. Leaves bowed slightly, stems leaned inward, and petals curled a little tighter, but nothing turned away. It was as if the garden had been waiting for this, not to be renewed, but to be quieted further still. You found a bench beneath the canopy of a large olive tree and settled there. The branches above caught much of the rain, allowing only a soft mist to pass through. The breeze was minimal, just enough to guide the falling water into shifting patterns. You leaned back, letting the sound surround you. It landed on stone, on grass, on water, on leaves. It formed no melody, and yet was deeply musical. There was no urgency in the rhythm, only steadiness. You let your hands rest on your lap. Your eyelids lowered slightly. Nothing more was needed. In that moment, somewhere farther in the garden, you heard a deeper rustling, perhaps a branch letting go of its gathered droplets, or a small bird adjusting its place beneath the leaves. These faint shifts brought no alarm. They became part of the whole. Even the sky, hidden behind veils of mist, offered no tension. The moon remained in place, now dimmed but still visible, casting a diffuse glow through the mist. The light moved like breath. It wrapped itself around branches and hedges and rested softly upon your shoulders. The garden exhaled. You matched its pace. The rain continued, never heavier, only fuller. It moved across surfaces, down stems, into soil. You watched as small trails formed along the stone path, rivulets that meandered lazily, catching fallen petals and tiny leaves. Every detail became clearer in the rain, not by contrast, but by softness. Nothing needed to be sharp. The world grew more round, more forgiving. Even time, so easily measured in daylight, now faded into rhythm. Your breath slowed again. You could no longer separate yourself from the garden. You were simply part of its rainfall. You stood once more, your clothing damp but not cold, your skin cooled but not chilled. You walked without direction, allowing your feet to move toward the ivy wall, where rain dripped from the topmost leaves. In a delicate cascade, you paused, holding your palm beneath it. The water gathered in small droplets, ran down your hand, and vanished. You did not wipe it away. You allowed it to move as it wished. Around you, the stone glistened in every corner. The statues had taken on a different presence, not frozen, but softened, like thoughts half remembered. The longer you remained outside, the deeper the quiet grew. You no longer heard the individual droplets. Instead, you heard the totality. Of them, a full sound, a fullness of being. You walked along the edge of the lily beds, watching how the large green leaves caught and cradled the rain. Each drop rolled along the surface, paused at the tip, then slipped over with grace. There was no need for light, no need for words. The sound and scent and rhythm formed a complete presence. You felt yourself becoming less a person in the garden and more like the rain itself. Eventually, you returned to the path that led to the villa. The rain followed, light and faithful. The candlelight from inside was warmer now, not because it had grown brighter, but because the world outside had grown cooler. The wooden door ahead remained ajar, waiting as it always had. You reached it with slow steps, not as an end, but as a fold between being out and being in, between water and flame. You turned once to look back, and the garden remained, wrapped in rain, untouched by time. It did not vanish. It simply held. You crossed the threshold and left your shoes near the doorway. Water dripped lightly from your sleeves. The villa welcomed you with warmth and hush. You did not light another lamp. You did not speak aloud. You simply stood there, letting the rain still fall behind you, letting the hush settle around you once more. The rain would continue a while longer, and long after it ceased, its rhythm would remain within you, in the breath, in the quiet, in the gentle closing of your eyes. The last breath of night still lingered as the first light of dawn stretched quietly across the sky. It was not a sudden change, but a slow unfolding, like the soft parting of curtain threads. You stepped gently outside, the air touched with the scent of wet leaves and faded jasmine. Rain had passed hours ago, and in its place remained a thin sheen of silver over every surface. The stones beneath your feet were cool, the garden quiet as a held breath. No birds yet stirred, no wind yet moved. The entire space rested in the hush before waking. You walked slowly, as if time had released its hold. The garden greeted you without ceremony. The hedges stood dark and full, their leaves glossy from the night's rain. The gravel path curved. Ahead, marked by damp footprints from earlier walks, now softened and disappearing. Dew clung to the petals of flowers that had remained closed in the dark. Every shape appeared rounder, every color more muted. Even sound had changed. Your steps made almost no noise. Somewhere above, the sky glowed faintly. Light, like memory, touched the tops of trees, but did not yet reach the ground. You followed the path toward the familiar bench beneath the olive tree. The same bench where you had sat under moonlight, then again beneath the gentle rain. The stone was colder now, though smooth and dry. You paused, not yet to sit, but to look around. The branches above had caught droplets like curls, which now dropped one by one in slow succession. They fell without urgency, finding earth without resistance. The garden still seemed to breathe, not with the rhythm of lungs, but with something deeper. A rhythm of presence, of being, of rest. At the center of the garden, the sundial remained unmoved. Its surface was dappled with watermarks. No shadow crossed it yet. The sun had not risen high enough to measure the morning. You stepped close and brushed a finger across its rim. The stone was cool, textured with the memory of countless days. Around it, the plants had leaned subtly outward, shaped by time and care. You lingered there for a while, letting your breath match the garden's stillness. No thoughts pulled at you, no demands rose. Just this quiet space and your presence within it. The lily pond reflected the soft gray sky like a mirror dulled. By fog, the surface lay still, disturbed only by the occasional fall of a droplet from a branch above. A single white blossom had fallen onto the water, floating lightly near the edge. You stood watching it, noticing how it drifted slowly, guided by nothing in particular. The lily pads around it remained steady, their wide leaves holding beads of rain that shimmered like glass. You did not reach for the flower, you only observed, and in doing so, became part of its slow motion. Along the edge of the garden, ivy stretched upward, climbing the wall that once seemed to mark the end of the path. You placed a hand gently upon the stone, still damp and rough beneath your fingers. The scent of moss and earth rose with the contact. You had passed this spot many times. Today it felt different, not because it had changed, but because you had softened. The rain, the silence, the time and stillness had worked gently within you. Now you leaned in slightly, letting the wall hold your weight. It did not push back. It simply was. You turned from the ivy and walked the curve toward the courtyard. The mosaic tiles underfoot were darkened with rain, the colors richer, more grounded. You moved slowly, stepping carefully, as if to avoid disturbing the peace laid out before you. The chimes near the arch had gone quiet, their strings still damp. A breeze passed lightly through, barely enough to lift a leaf, but enough to carry the faintest aroma of herbs from the edge of the path. You breathed it in. The scent was not sharp. It was round, earthy, and full of memory. You reached the terrace, where a wide view of the garden opened in gentle layers. Trees rose at varying heights, hedges curved in soft lines, and the paths shimmered faintly with morning moisture. You sat again, hands resting on your knees. The bench was carved from smooth stone, warm now from your touch. You gazed outward, not to look for anything, but to let the view rest in your eyes. The garden had given its quiet offering, not once, but many times. In fragrance, in stillness, in rain, and now in light. You closed your eyes briefly, letting the light on your face speak for itself. It was not yet warm, but held the promise of warmth. Not yet full, but whole enough. You listened for any distant sound, a rustle of leaves, the wings of a bird, the creak of a branch, but none came. Only the soft beat of your own breath. Even that began to slow. You are no longer the observer. You are the space between garden and air, between stone and sky, between sleep and waking. A bridge of breath. You opened your eyes once more and stood slowly. No rush, no need for words. The moment was full. A final walk through the path brought you back toward the villa. The stones held the same shape beneath your feet. The light had shifted slightly, brushing the tops of hedges and blooming herbs with pale gold. You paused once more beneath the archway, turning to look again. The garden did not change. It did not shrink or wave goodbye. It simply remained, just as it had always been, waiting, breathing, still. As you stepped inside, the warmth of the room welcomed you. The scent of aged wood, dry stone, and linen folded into the air. Outside, the garden faded from sight, but not from presence. It lingered in your breath, in your skin, in the rhythm of your chest. No farewell was needed. The garden had given everything without request, and now it slept again, folded in light, wrapped in air. You closed your eyes as the hush returned, a hush so complete it became sleep itself, sweet dreams.